Hello, I'm Sophia Lou and welcome to my channel. Hello guys and welcome to my Spectrum Noir marker review. This marker review was highly requested by you guys because these markers pretty much are available in most crafts and art stores, and you can find these very easily in Hobbycraft, on Amazon and most art stores, and they do have an Illustrator range as well as a standard range. I haven't actually tried the Illustrator range, but if you would like me to, please let me know in the comments section down below. Regular retail price for a pack of 6 is $8.99, but most of the times they tend to be on sale anyway if you look around and have a look at a few different stores, which makes it roughly around about £1.49 per marker, which is absolutely fantastic. Looks between, depending on what website you go through for the 24 pack, it tends to be between £21 to £25, and there is an Illustrator option available for the regular retail price of $24.99. Apparently the Illustrator ones are much better quality, and as always I'll be comparing these to my Winsor & Newton Pro markers. In comparison to the Winsor & Newton Pro markers, they have a chisel tip, they have a bullet tip, and apparently the Spectrum Noir has replaceable nibs as well. So if you did want to have a brush tip option, that is available to you as well. Also, apparently these are refillable, which if you are looking for a cheap marker which is going to be refillable to be able to reuse again and again, I do actually highly recommend these. Overall, they were not that bad to use. I have a massive list of pros in comparison to the cons. The barrels weren't rounded, so they didn't roll away too easily. The colours blend beautifully well. Excellent price per marker. It wasn't too much, it wasn't too little. The ink quality was really lovely. Apart from some parts it was a little bit blotchy. The fact that they're refillable, the fact that you can have replacement nibs in case you wear yours down, and the fact that it's pretty much available in most stores. Now the range that I'm using here is a pastel tone range, so I knew that I did not have a massive amount of colours to work with, but nevertheless I wanted to see what I could achieve with the colours. A lot of these are very light hues, so you've got very pale colours, very pale pinks, and very pale / like desaturated yellows. So working with these colours can be a bit of a challenge, but overall it was a lot of fun to do. They blend really beautifully, and even when I built the colours on top, I wasn't getting massively overly saturated areas where the ink was coming through. Now bear in mind, as I will say with any marker review, your markers are going to perform better on marker paper. They're going to perform better on any paper which doesn't have as much texture. So if you're using Bristol board, or if you're using specifically marker paper, they are going to perform better on there. I personally don't like to use marker paper. I like to do mixed media, and which is why I tend to do mixed media pieces. So you'll notice that the marker quality and the ink quality may slightly differ if you are using different types of paper. Nevertheless, but because I do use this paper all the time, it's what I'm going to use to review it on, just because this paper is perfect for everything that I want to do. So when I saw this colour palette, I knew I wanted to do something very pastel, and I decided that I really wanted to do a witch. I'm using my standard techniques here. I'm using pencil instead of fine liner, because sometimes I find that pencil gives you a softer approach for your line work. It also can give a really nice touch if you don't want like the harshness of fine lines. It can add a lot of really nice texture to your line work, and I do actually recommend it for anyone who's looking for a softer approach. You can get coloured fine liners, but I find that there is a slight texture that pencils will add that fine liners don't quite add. So, ready for my cons list. The colours don't actually represent what's on the lid, unfortunately, and this is why it's so important to colour swatch before you do anything. If you are going to use any art supply, please colour swatch, because the colours that represent on the actual palette or on the lid or anything are not going to match. So make sure you colour swatch beforehand, but overall, I can't fault them. They worked really well. The barrels sometimes do feel a little bit cheap, and the lids in particular can be a little bit difficult to get off. I sometimes, because my hands sometimes don't work properly, the lids were like really stuck on there sometimes, and they just did not want to come off. Sometimes the paper did speckle, especially when I oversaturated certain areas, and especially with the darker tones as well. I can't say for true for the entire marker range, but I did notice in the darker like pastel tones I was struggling with them a little bit. As well, it's just a small detail. What I really like about the Winsor & Newton Pro markers, and what I really like about that range, is the fact that you can tell what end is what. For the bullet nib, they have a pointed lid, and for the chisel tip, they have a rounded end. And it's just something small, and it's a personal preference for me. Most markers actually don't have differential in their marker end tips, like their lids, but I actually prefer that because it makes it so much easier when you're colouring, especially when you just pick up the pen and you just go into colour and you'll like accidentally realise that you've ended up with the chisel tip. It does happen. You'll notice as well I'm not colouring these witches exactly the same, and that is because I wanted to go for different palettes for both of them. I still get in the same amount of tonal range in the markers, but it's just showing what you can do with the same colours, and what you can produce with that overall. If you are looking for a cheap marker, I couldn't tell you how long they last for. I've used Spectrum markers in the past. I usually get grey tones, and they are lovely to use, and they can last you quite a while. When I actually had these Spectrum markers for a long time, I think they lasted me a fair few months, around about 6 months before the end of it. So overall, I would 100% recommend these, especially if you are looking for a marker for the first time and you're looking to have a purchase. You can see I'm struggling with this lid here, and you'll see that these overall, I cannot fault them that much. There was very little that I could say that was wrong with them. Overall, they were really lovely to use. I really enjoyed blending with them, and the fact that they weren't rounded and didn't roll away, and there was just so many plus points that I could find. It was quite hard to find like points that were quite, bad for it. Also as well, it appears that they have a decent colour range, which is always good when you are looking at markers. You don't want to get like a marker range and then find out that they only have like 2 colours, which does happen. I have seen it happen before. But if you go to the website, you can get lots of information off them. I'll leave links down to the websites down below, so you can check them out yourselves. I'll also leave links down below to the Amazon store so that you can check that out as well. It's always handy to try out different markers to see whether or not you like them, because sometimes you'll find that a marker that works for someone else may not necessarily work for you. I know a lot of people sing the praises of like Copic markers, but I personally can't afford them. So the cheaper markers for me are much better, simply because they work better for me and for what I would say and what I would do. I would highly recommend checking these out. If you are interested, I'll leave links down below as always. But overall, really lovely to use. I can barely fault them. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I hope it's been somewhat informative in a way. Let me know if there's any art supplies that you would like me to check out. I know there's been a few more markers that I've been recommended that I would absolutely love to check out. And if there's anything that an art supply that you would like me to see me do, let me know. I'm always interested. I'm always fascinated to see what different art supplies are like against each other. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and if you're new, subscribe. But as always, folks, stay creative.